Brandon here, Clunkers on the Hill again. We showed you a little bit of a video earlier on how to mix auto filler, and now we're going to show you how to apply it as kind of a follow-up to that. We've got a hood here off of Colorado we've been talking about before, and as I told you before, this truck was rolled, and so the metal is all good, but it's got a lot of little pucks and dings on it, plus it was an older vehicle and it had some damage. So we sanded out a few of our spots, sanded out one here that was kind of low, and we did a little bit earlier, but it's still going to work for our demonstration purposes. And here we had a high spot. That's what the metal is that you're seeing. Now, the trick with a high spot is normally you would use these tools here, dollies and hammers. And you place a dolly on one side of your metal, hammer on the other side of it with your metal in between like so, and you work it back and forth, kind of stretching and compressing the metal and getting it back into good shape. The problem with the hood or something like this is that you have an inner structure on the hood that gives it stiffness and stability. So we can't get our dolly in place there. So what we actually had to do was create a dent. So we've got a little bit of a hollow now that we're going to be able to fill. Okay, so now I know we already showed you mixing earlier. So we're going to mix up a little bit more filler here to take care of some of our spots. Now I did not prep the entire hood. I went around and found some of my spots that I didn't like and that I thought was going to need a little bit of auto filler placed in it to fix it up. And I used a rough paper on my sander. I used a flat sander because that'll reveal where your high spots and your low spots are. We took off of the clear coat. This is a clear coat, base coat, clear coat finish on this vehicle. And we took the clear off of the areas, and we used a little bit of the paint, a little bit of the primer that is there, and kind of blocked it to give us our high spots and our low spots. These spots were obvious. This was a really high spot that came out quickly. That was a dent. I don't know if the camera will pick up any of this, but see there's some low spots here, and there's some high spots here, the metal showing, right? So we'll have to work on those. But just to show you how we're going to do a spot or two. So I get my product all mixed up. Use the applicator of choice. Your applicator is basically flat. They have a little bit of a beveled edge on them. Different kind of applicators, it's up to you what you like to use. So, and when I apply it on, thin coats are best. And don't overwork it and don't play with it. The more that you play with it sometimes, the worse you're going to get things. Now, don't worry about the fact that, see, there's a high spot here and there's a low spot there or whatever and stuff. I've filled over the spot and that looks much bigger than the spot that I'm repairing. Here we got a little dent. What I like to do with my applicator is get a ball in the middle. It'll spread out over the applicator as you're spreading it. And as you see, I'm kind of scraping pretty hard on all the edges around it, and it's filling the low spot. Don't worry that it looks crappy and that it's much bigger than the area that you're trying to do. And don't worry about trying to get it perfect the first time. Lots of layers is better, more layers than less is better, and keep building it up. We're going to knock it down with our sander, and there's going to be a time when the product is going to change the way that it's working. As the product changes, you'll know it. And don't try to keep going. Once it quits working correctly, don't keep trying to work with it. The stuff will change really quickly. And once it does, it's garbage. Throw it out, don't worry about it. Now, the neat thing about it, though, is that you've got your little bit of leftover product here. Now, I got quite a bit because I mixed it quite a bit on purpose, and I'm kind of taking time here as it switches around. Now, I don't know if you can tell this, but it's starting to change. Now, some of the side effects of this are that it gets not only hard as it's starting to work, it gets really hot. Of course, you can't see that in the camera, but the stuff gets hot, and see how quickly it has changed from creamy to starting to be a hard lump of stuff, right? The good thing about having a little bit more, of course you don't want to be wasting a lot of product, is that with that product now you can tell when this product is getting closer to being ready. Okay? Now, a little note. Don't throw this directly in your garbage can. Don't throw this, especially if you've been doing different body work around the shop and you've got paper or anything like that. You throw this in the paper, it does get hot enough, it will combust the paper. You don't want the paper to combust and have a big problem in your shop. Insurance company's not going to be happy with you. So, as the stuff gets closer to being ready, just going to set this aside. Then some of the other tools we use is this. This is a rasp. Now, there are different shaped body rasps. And it kind of reminds you of your cheese grater that your wife might have in the house, or you might have in the house. This is just a small hand one, and it's basically a little cheese grater. And if you had things like this spot here where it's got a real high spot on it, you're going to be able to use this as your product changed, and you knew how it changed because it was on your board and you were sort of paying attention. You'll be able to use that to cut off the high spots, and it's kind of like the roughest paper that you're ever going to use. You're going to work from there, from a rougher grade of paper. Depending on what you're doing, it might be an 80 or a 60 grit or 100 grit or something like that paper. And you're going to keep working your way down to like a 220 grit, and that's your filler level. Then you're going to go to a primer or something like that, and you're going to be 220 and work your papers down till you're getting down to like a 600, a 400 or a 600 grit finish. Your high numbers, your 600 grit and all that sort of stuff is more like your clear coat. So anyway, that's a little bit about how to apply filler. So now if we've waited long enough, we'll use our rasp here a little bit, and you see how it cuts off the high spots. Cuts off the high spots, leaves the low spots, and it's still low. Now the best tool you've got in your whole toolbox is your hand. You know if it's still a little low, you know if it's a little high, you know what it is. You can feel it, and you can tell, oh, I'm going to need a little more, or I'm going to need a little less, you know, I got to keep sanding it off, and just keep working it. You'll get used to it, and the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. All right, Clunkers on the Hill, thank you very much. See you next time.